Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dog Co Secrets podcast. My name is Michelle Kline. I am your host, and I am also the founder of Dog Co Launch, where pet care companies come to grow and scale. Today's episode, I want to talk about why your employees quit and how to keep them longer. So let's get into it. So, the further I get into this business model, and by this I mean in-home pet care business models, which really is where I focus, I would say 90% of my coaching and consulting is on that in-home one-to-one model for pet sitting and dog walking. And the further I get into this business model, the more clear it is becoming to me that retention really is the name of the game for driving any sort of deeply significant growth and revenue. You know, the value in a one-off dog walk, if you have a pet care business, is very low compared to the value of a recurring 5 times a week uses you for the next 3 years client. That's a really, really different value and price point. So our ability to retain both clients and staff is really fundamental to the growth and overall success of your business. So in broader Dog Co this year, I am focusing a lot on both client retention and we'll be focusing a lot on employee retention because I really am seeing how these two metrics in your business are critical to your growth and critical to scaling if that is your goal for your pet care business. And we will talk much more on the client side of retention. But for this week, I wanted to talk a little bit about employee retention. So first and foremost, I would be remiss if I did not direct you immediately to a resource that has been fundamentally helpful for a lot of dog co companies, myself included. And that is the book Never Lose an Employee Again by Joey Coleman. If you were at the Dog Co Summit last year or connected to it or saw me advertising about it, you would have seen me talking a lot about Joey Coleman. He came and did a 4-hour workshop on employee retention at the summit. It was a pre-summit workshop. It was a half day on Friday before we got started. It was phenomenal. It was so good, in fact, that we are bringing him back to do his workshop on client retention this year. Because again, those are two sides of the same coin. Retention in both areas of the business matters very deeply for growing your business sustainably and scaling. And his book, Never Lose an Employee Again, is a phenomenal resource. I have gotten a lot of value out of it. I wish I knew about Joey when I had my pet care business. So I would heavily encourage you to go get that resource, to read that book, to shameless plug, consider coming to the client retention workshop because I really believe there's so much value that you would get from that. You know, there's a reason that we are lining up these resources because I would say we, broader Dog Co. Dog Co is now nowhere near just me. It's become quite a big beast. So that's something that we are really working with companies on is understanding retention and focusing on retention. What does it take to scale your pet care business? My name's Michelle Kline. I'm the founder of Dog Co Launch, where pet care companies come to grow and scale. And I want to send you a case study of how one of my clients took his monthly revenue in just 1 year from $17,000 to over $73,000. And yes, that is monthly revenue, not annual. To get this case study and to learn more about Dog Co and what we do and how we help companies, go to dogcolaunch.com/case study. So let's get into employee retention. So I want to talk about 3 key reasons today that I believe employees quit and 3 ways that we can focus on course correcting to keep them longer. And one thing I'm trying to do this year is to be better about tying back every strategic decision or piece of advice that I give to a metric of how you could track it to know impact. So one of the costs that I recommend businesses understand and know inside of their model is what is the cost to hire and train someone up until they become profitable for your company. For most companies I work with, that is somewhere in the $1,200 to $1,500 range. And that's just like the hard costs of getting somebody up to speed and actually producing revenue. That doesn't account for all of the missed revenue opportunities that most likely are happening because you are understaffed, can't market, can't confidently take work, you aren't upselling clients or doing anything like that. And I think this is an important number to know because when we are looking at strategies for retention, that's just a data point. It helps you make better decisions on where to allocate resources, knowing what it's going to cost you to lose someone or to replace them more specifically. So that is your metric of the episode. I recommend you find out what does it truly cost you to replace someone when you have turnover, because that's going to clarify some things for you, I promise. Okay, so the first reason I want to talk about that employees quit and some strategies on how to fix this for your business, or at least improve it. We will never fully fix retention. Just so you know, people do migrate on. There are life circumstances that will take them out of your business. This is a metric we are trying to improve, not to fix completely, because that would not be reality. So wanted to say that. So the first reason that employees quit, I believe, is because they do not see a pathway of growth within the company. Now, you may not be attracting people that want like a defined career path. I don't necessarily mean that everybody coming into your business is looking to advance, looking to get promoted. There are a lot of people that are attracted to becoming a dog walker or a pet sitter actually for the opposite reason, because it does feel like a more restful job, at least, on the onset of applying. Jury's out when they get into it if it feels that way. But it is perceived to be an enjoyable job. It's perceived to be lower stress, different things like that. So I don't necessarily think that people always think they want a pathway, but I do deeply believe that people want to feel like they are on a journey and they are in motion and moving forward. Some people want to feel like they are moving forward really, really, really fast. So they do want that very formal advancement option. Other people move at a slower pace that is less of an immediate priority. But I do believe that people, especially the type of person that you probably want to retain on your team, want to contribute value, want to feel like they are growing, they're improving, they are changing, and they are contributing more value over time. There are different ways we can create that pathway. We can create pathways for people to grow into admin and management positions. We can create pathways for people to become more trained and skilled dog walkers or pet sitters. We can create pathways for people to maybe do events or marketing or support the community or like bring in new leads. There are a lot of different pathways forward that we could build for people. But I think just having one period is amazing for retention. When I put an employee pathway in place, our retention went up dramatically. And I do believe that is because people saw a deeper and bigger purpose they could have with the business, apart from working only with the animals. And don't get me wrong, we had a lot of people who were like, loved the animal work. We had some people who were like, I have no interest in ever advancing into any deeper role. I am only here for the animals. That was more rare though. Typically, at some point, there would be some reason that people would feel the need to leave. And this gave them a way to continue growing within the business. If you're listening to this, you're going to miss the visual of this metaphor because it is going to be visual. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see what I am doing. But I genuinely believe that people are either moving past the business, so on a horizontal plane. So they kind of come into the business. Let's say the business is a triangle. They enter in and then kind of stay on this journey until they exit. But I believe when we give people a pathway, we give them a way to grow up and further into the journey of the business. And so that's something to keep in mind. We always want to make sure that we are building a pathway that your business can financially sustain. I do not want any business over leveraging into positions that they can't yet afford, like due to their size or the way their labor's been set up or anything like that. But I do think it is worth thinking through, how do I help people legitimately grow here? in any direction. How do I help them grow? How do I help them change? How do I help them achieve more and contribute more? Because I genuinely believe that the right hire cares about that. They may not want to go fast, but they care about it overall. The second reason we lose people that we can focus on for retention is we lose people when they do not have a lack of clarity. The onboarding of your employees, making sure they get into the job, they are trained, they feel equipped, they have all the context that they need to succeed really early on is going to be one of the best ways that you can fix turnover. The human brain craves clarity. It's actually really interesting if you get into the brain science of all of it. You may know or may not know that I have my master's degree in social work. And one of the things that's most interesting about the human brain is the human brain is very resource protective. So the human brain wants to conserve energy. The entire body does, actually. It's like a survival mechanism. The less energy you expend, the more of it you have, and that is overall good for you. So the brain does not want to expend energy. And so how that translates into sales, into job performance, is that when people lack clarity, it's very taxing on the brain to go figure out how to self-create it. And oftentimes that creates an opt-out point. So in sales, for example, or if we're looking at converting maybe off of your website, we want to make it as simple and as easy as possible for people to understand exactly what click to take and what to do, because we don't want them having to figure that out. If they're having to put brain space into where on earth do I go on this site to find out more about becoming a client, they're not thinking about your service. They're thinking about your website and how to navigate it. And that's not what we want. We want them using that brain power in an area that is going to lead to a conversion, not in an area that is going to get them kind of stumbling around. They get frustrated. And then what do? They leave because it takes too much brain power to figure out what they wanted to do. And we need to be careful about that same dynamic when it comes to our staff and when it comes to retaining our staff. Because when our staff feel like they are kind of stumbling through the job, they're not really sure what the expectations are, they were kind of thrown in, it got really hectic, we were understaffed, that creates an experience where there is a high cognitive load to figuring out when and where to be, what to do, how to do it well, and to feel that you are set up for success with whatever that position is asking of you. We don't want our staff to feel that way. We want them to feel supported, and a lot of that has to do with the clarity they are given when they first come in. So one thing I talk about a lot in Dogco is how to find 80-20 returns inside of your business. The 80-20 return when it comes to employee clarity and retention is going to be clarity in the onboarding process and clarity in the training of the role to get them up to speed as efficiently as possible while taking the time that you need to give them the clarity on how to do the job. So clarity is that big second category that I would encourage you to focus on for why people might be leaving and how to keep them longer. Specifically in the very first part of the employee journey, Joey Coleman focuses on the first 100 days. And I do think that's really important, but I think even slowing down to dig deep into the first week is going to be really big. There's a lot of opportunity most likely there if your employee retention is currently low. All right. And then the third reason employees quit and how to keep them longer. And also, maybe let me back up. This is clearly oversimplified. There are several reasons that employees might be quitting your business. These are the top 3 offenders that I tend to see in companies, not due to any ill will, just because we get busy. It's hard. Many of us did not get into this business to manage people, yet here we are. So these are 3 top reasons that I see. These are the places I would start first in doing like some problem identification. If your business is reflecting a low retention rate for your staff, but there are more reasons it could be. But the third one we will talk about on this podcast is culture and people. There are pieces of the post-pandemic context that have shifted a lot in the hiring environment. And if you're listening to this, that probably felt like the biggest oversimplification in the world. I heard it as it came out. I was like, that sounded dumb. Yes, there are a lot of things that are different. We all know that as employers. But one of the things that I think is just kind of like a stark contrast, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, is I think people have a much lower tolerance for accepting work environments that they do not feel are productive, healthy, supportive, or worth their time. I personally don't think this is a bad thing to come out of the pandemic, but I think it does put a little bit more pressure on companies to make sure that the culture and the people surrounding your staff are positive and going to affect your retention rate positively long term. I think it is more important than ever to make sure that the people on your team truly are a culture fit, that we hire and fire by culture, that we don't let ourselves get stuck with employees on the team that are culture killers, that we're quick to address that when we see it. I mean, culture affects every corner of your business, and your employee retention is a very direct place that culture can affect. It can affect it positively if you have a work environment where people feel incredibly seen and cared for and supported, and they like who they work with, and they feel known, liked, trusted, that is going to positively affect your retention. People stay when they like who they work with. Conversely, if you have a culture that is struggling, maybe you have a couple team members that are just really negative, they complain all the time, they talk crap about clients, they talk crap about each other, and it creates like a poor culture for people to be in day after day, that will affect your retention negatively. And so I would just encourage you, culture one flows from the top down. And not that like you as the owner are not creating a good culture. I don't know who's listening to this, so maybe, I don't know. But more likely, it's whatever you have allowed to permeate in the rest of the culture, that your actions by allowing it suggest that that's an okay standard. And I'd be really cautious with that. I'd be very quick to select out team members on your team that are pulling down the culture, because the effect of that will be felt across the whole business. Maybe not immediately, but at some point it will trickle into all corners of the business. And so I personally take that very seriously. Whenever I have a new staff member join my team, like a full-time person working closely with me, I have a document that I send to them on like basically like the expectations. Like, here is who we are to each other. Here is information about what it looks like to work well with me. And here are our culture non-negotiables. One of them for me is gossip. If you are treating other people unkindly, if you are talking behind their back, if you're not willing to bring issues to them directly, low bar, no tolerance. We're not going to do that here because it doesn't serve the overall mission of what we're trying to do. So I think we want to make sure that that's clarified for your team, that a standard has been set, and that we truly follow through with holding that as the bar of how people relate to each other and how they relate to you, because they reflect you in the community, and we want to make sure that that reflection is at the standard that you want it to be. I hope this gave you a few takeaways to start to kind of pull apart maybe the issue of employee retention. If you are churning people, if you are frustrated at how long they're staying, you know what? I want to leave you with a final pro tip because I'm very, very pro this move. If you have people leaving, I would highly encourage that you start doing exit interviews. Exit interviews are the best way for you to get data on what's actually happening inside of your business. So take the time, send them the questions ahead of time, and do a phone call to ask, what was your experience truly like working here? That is going to serve you if you deep dive and get that information. And that will really inform like which of these three categories, or maybe it's a different one, is the key problem affecting this metric in your business. All right, everyone, I will catch you in the next episode.